This video is sponsored by Ground News.
I'm going to let you say, but I think it's the biggest deal ever made. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
After spending the weekend playing golf in Scotland, Donald Trump sat down with the European Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, to try and hammer out a trade deal between the EU and the US. Everyone in Europe, and probably the US too, were hoping Trump had a good round on the course, with plenty of birdies, so he'd be in a good mood and ready to sign something. And yes, finally, after 3 months of back and forth, a deal has finally been made. But don't get too excited. This deal might be very one-sided. And the real question is, who really benefits from this deal? Spoiler alert, it's definitely not the EU. But to understand this deal, we first need to rewind a bit. Before Sunday's agreement was reached, the US had slapped tariffs on a lot of European goods. A 50% tariff on steel and aluminium, 25% on cars, and 10% on basically everything else. And the EU in return? Nothing. Brussels has decided to hold off on retaliating, hoping that playing nice might help negotiations. But the EU did have a backup plan, one retaliatory package ready to go on August the 7th. It would have included up to 30% in tariffs on 93 billion euros worth of US goods, covering aircraft, cars, medical and electrical equipment, soybeans, motorbikes, and of course, jeans. Always the jeans. Still though, Trump's tariffs have already hit 370 billion euros worth of EU exports. That's about 70% of everything the bloc sends to the US, way more than what the EU was planning to target. But, and this part really matters, Trump also threatened to raise tariffs to 30% on August the 1st. That would drag even more EU exports into the firing line and escalate into a full-blown trade war. So yeah, the pattern here is pretty clear. The US moved fast with tariffs. The EU, more cautious, trying diplomacy first. But has this strategy actually worked? Well, let's have a closer look at this new shiny deal and whether it's any good. And we're not so sure, and neither are a lot of media sources. There are many opinions and many agendas when it comes to whether this is a good trade deal. And there are 79 sources covering this story that you can read online. But how can you tell that what you are reading isn't hugely biased? Honestly, that's a challenge I continuously face in my everyday life. And that's exactly where today's sponsor, Ground News, comes in. For this story alone, Ground News identified at least 15 left-leaning and 13 right-leaning sources reporting on it. You could go and read each one further below, but one of Ground News' best features is their bias comparison tool. For example, left-leaning outlets saw the deal as a needed escape from damaging 30% tariffs, warning of risks to supply chains, consumers, and businesses. Right-leaning outlets were more upbeat, calling it a landmark move in Trump's trade plan and showing EU leaders as frustrated. And there's so much more. The Ground News app and website come with a whole range of smart features. If you'd like to give it a try, you can get 40% off the Unlimited Access Vantage plan by using the link in the description or scanning the QR code on the screen. Back to the video. So what's in the deal the EU and the US have agreed upon? Let's look back at the status quo and see what actually changes. Firstly, the US is scrapping its threatened 30% tariff on EU goods and replacing it with a flat 15% tariff across the board. For cars, this means a drop from 25% to 15%, a relief for Europe's auto industry. But for most other goods, previously tariffed at around 10%, this now increases to 15%. And as for steel and aluminium, there's no change. It's still stuck at a punishing 50%. These are the new US tariffs on EU goods. As for the EU's response, the planned tariffs on US products, none of them will likely be implemented. And this is not all. The EU has also agreed to invest $600 billion more than planned in the United States. And on top of that, the EU Commission has committed to spend $750 billion on US energy by the end of Trump's term. That's over $250 billion per year on American liquefied natural gas, oil, and nuclear fuels, all meant to replace Russian energy. And then there's also talk of Europe buying more military equipment from the United States, but the specifics here are still missing. Now, this looks like a pretty one-sided deal, but there is a little bit of hope going forward. After the meeting, von der Leyen called this a framework deal, meaning it's just the beginning. She also said that both sides have already agreed on a zero-for-zero scheme for specific goods like aircraft and related parts, semiconductor equipment, critical raw materials, and some chemical and agricultural products. Basically, this means no tariffs on these items. And von der Leyen added, we will keep working to add more products to this list. Let's hope this happens quickly.
The European market is open. It's 450 million people. So it's a good deal. It's a huge deal. With tough negotiations. I knew it at the beginning, and it was indeed very tough, but we came to good conclusions for both sides. So again, congratulations and many thanks.
Meloni was also quick to praise the deal, but said that the details of the final agreement still needed to be analyzed in detail. And of course, Germany's Friedrich Merz also welcomed the deal, saying, "We have managed to preserve our fundamental interests, even if I hoped for more relief in transatlantic trade." No surprises there, given how much is at stake for the German car industry. But not everyone is likely to be happy with this deal. Macron has been hawkish since the very beginning. And at an EU summit in June, he stated that France would not accept an unbalanced deal, which is not surprising given his long-standing push for European strategic autonomy. But given that countries don't hold a veto on trade deals, it's very unlikely that he can block it. Here's what I think. Let's not sugarcoat it. Parts of this deal really suck. The 15% tariff on all goods, honestly, that part felt unavoidable, especially when you look at the other deals that Trump has pushed through in recent weeks. And the idea of building a list of exemptions where tariffs will be 0% is a decent start and could improve drastically over time. But what really bothers me are the investments. $600 billion into the US, while European companies are struggling to compete. That is not how we are going to make our industry at home stronger and more competitive. And don't get me started on energy. We spent hundreds of billions of euros on Russian gas, and now we're heading straight into another dependency, swapping Russian gas for American LNG. That really isn't how we build strategic autonomy. And then there's the military spending. Yes, you can argue we don't yet have the capability to meet a 5% spending target with our own defense industry. But even so, shouldn't we be doing everything possible to spend that money at home? And after all of that, not a single meaningful concession was made for the EU. It's really disappointing, and frankly, I expected a better deal. But what do you think? Was it smart diplomacy or a missed opportunity? Let me know in the comments. And thank you so much for watching.